She says, hi, Adam.
Tell us hello.
He says hello. You good? Okay, is it started?
Yeah, started, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm so excited today, you guys, to have my buddy, my long-term Graham friend. We should talk about how we became Graham friends, Adam Parr, on the podcast today to talk about, well, I'm sure we're going to talk about a few topics, but how to start a podcast and any of your top tips. Adam, I'm so happy to have you. Super excited. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be on your show. It's great to be here. I'm really grateful.
Okay, so you have done so many podcasts, but I am interested, how many like other people's podcasts have you been on so far? It's probably a big number, but do you have a guess?
I'd say I've probably been on, I'd say around 10 or 11 people's shows
Nice.
to date, I think.
Nice. Okay. And you started your podcast. I'm gonna try to flip this around for Graham. You started your podcast when exactly?
I started it back in January last year, January time.
Really? 2020 January?
Yeah, that's when I started.
Oh.
So I kind of just started it on my phone, which I still use now. And
Right.
then I basically downloaded Anchor and then just did it via audio for around the first 60 episodes, just kind of, build up my confidence and experience.
That I can't believe that, because you have how many episodes now?
I've released, I think, around 205 or 6 episodes to date,
206.
and then I have about 20 something plus in the library to still come out.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's an incredible number of podcasts. So I wanted to dive right in because we said we're going to kind of keep ourselves on the time limit to see what we can get in, right?
Yeah.
And I want to practice my questioning skills. And if I deviate, you are the professional, so you can course correct me. But I wanted to dive in to see what is some advice you give people just starting out. But first, so like tactical things, like really things that people could use and go out like this week if they've been thinking about it and actually execute finally. Mm-hmm. But right before we get into that tactical stuff, I want to hear about what made you start one and a little bit about your background. So one thing I really love about you is your mindset. And we've talked about this when I've been on your podcast. So I have a little bit of background about how you achieved your mindset and how you kind of think a little bit, but I don't know how that relates to kind of your goal of the podcast and why you started. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a great question. And I think I generally got into podcasting basically through, deep down through having a genuine interest in other people. I've always had a genuine interest in other people and, connecting with them. And I basically, watch a lot of Joe Rogan. I watch a lot of, Gary Vee. And I had the idea of doing a podcast for a couple of years, and then I put it off for a while because, I was worried what people are going to think about it and all of that. And, kind of, what people are going to think, is it going to work? Mm-hmm. And I generally kind of thought to myself, how can I, because it was around COVID time when I started, and I thought to myself, people need that kind of motivation and that kind of positivity. And, after having my own struggles in the past with, mental health and that kind of thing, I kind of thought, kind of surround it around that kind of thing. So I basically, took the plunge and just thought about, providing value to other people, connecting with people and what their stories are, and how to share that to other people. But it's something that I've always had deep down within myself, as an interest, in other people, to connect with other people. But I didn't always have the confidence to put out my content too much, if that makes sense. I would do mini video clips and then delete it and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh man, I got to try to stay focused. So I think something that a lot of people are going to resonate a lot with, and that I do too, is you said you kept putting it off because you were worried about what other people would think. Can you dive into that a little bit more? I think everyone can relate with that on some level, but if you kind of look back and think about what some of those core fears were, what comes up for you? Like, what was it that you were worried about that other people might think?
I think it was ultimately kind of I used to be like a very big perfectionist. So I used to try and get things correct. I didn't want to make a mistake. I would worry what people are just naturally going to think about it, and that anxiety of having people probably be negative, or people being critical about it, and a lot of it, to do with my self confidence. Like not feeling as confident in myself, and kind of like kind of battling with that, like kind of like that's little bit of self doubt, and comparing my probably looking at other people. I used to look at a lot of other people's content and what they're doing and compare it.
Mm,
And
mm.
I remember like,
Comparison.
yeah, and yeah, I think a lot of it, like, self-esteem,
Mhm. What helped you push past that then? What was finally like the tipping point that where you said like, F it, I'm just gonna dive in and like actually start doing it and just start putting it out and maybe, not deleting those videos. Cause you'd mentioned like you do a video, then like delete it or not post it or whatever. What was the tipping point that made you change your mind and finally just like go?
yeah, I think it was when I was watching. I think I was watching someone's video doing a podcast. I think it was Joe Rogan. So I was watching a lot of Joe Rogan, and he talked about how he started out. And I looked at some of his early content, and he just said like, just water it, just nurture it, just keep attending to it, just keep
Mm-hmm.
feeding into it, and just keep building on that. And it really kind of inspired me to really do it. And I thought to myself, well, if he's doing it, then kind of what's stopping me? And I think for so long, I got to a point where I just always worried, what people were thinking, and lot, self consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of thought to myself, I'm done with this now. I kind of just reached the point where I just let go of that, and I decided to do that. And then I saw that Anchor, the app Anchor, where you can release make podcasts. And I just downloaded that and just started experimenting. Had a few people on the podcast, and after like the first five, I was like, there's something working here, you know, and I had a really good friend of mine called Mark Dawes, who's a really great guy. He's ex Royal Navy, and he's into NLP and stuff like that.
Okay.
And
What is
he's
NLP?
like neuro linguistic programming.
Okay.
So he's involved in that. He's written a book on that, and he was on my podcast, and he gave me a lot of. He was like that trapeze almost, that gave me that confidence boost, because I could see he really enjoyed it, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to continue doing this.
Hmm. That's awesome. I love that. I think that we can all relate to that and just kind of finally getting to the point of just kind of diving in. So we connected, I believe, on like a Gary V podcast. No,
Mm.
not on Gary V podcast, but on a Gary V
It
post,
was,
I think, or D
I
Rock.
think it was D. I think D Rock put those networking posts out there, and
Yeah.
I remember seeing your profile, and I was like, oh, you got some pretty cool stuff going on, and I think I reached out to you, and we just connected one time, and yeah, I think that's how we met. I think
Hmm.
that's how it's quite nice and organic like that, I think. And
Yeah. That was probably one of my favorite things to come out of like COVID is well, there's a lot of good learning, but for me, I realized I'm way more of an extrovert than I ever thought because I'm
mm,
typically an introvert. But I have to put on the extrovert hat a lot, but I'm way more extrovert than I thought. And that, like you reaching out, kind of made me get out of my comfort zone and do a podcast, which I wanted to. And then I was on Kristen's, and um, it was just so, it ticked a lot of boxes for me to connect with another person who was very like-minded. Um, and be able to have that connection during that time when everything's shut down. And your
yeah.
content is so uplifting and so powerful. I love it so much. And I just am
Oh, thank
astounded
you.
at how many you put out. So let's talk about you got started on your phone and with the Anchor podcast. Like most people have phones. I really do think people overthink it. I definitely overthink it. I was like, and I also geek out about equipment. So I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get this and this. And then I was like, I could just start. So you can start with basically an iPhone. and like
Yeah.
even like the voice memo app, right? But does
Mm.
Anchor have like capacities where you like record within that app, or is it mostly to output it?
So with Anchor, you can record within the app for 2 hours on
Okay.
audio, like a phone call, and
Okay.
it's a bit like an audio version of Zoom. So you go into a lobby, you send the link to somebody, they accept it, but they have to have the app as well, create a profile,
Mm-hmm.
and then when they accept the link, you get put into a conversation. It records straight away, and there's no kind of stop button or anything like that. It's just continuous
Just
until
go, right? Okay.
yeah. Then if you want to stop it, you can stop it.
Mm-hmm. Um, how for the people that you talk to, I'm sure you actually get a lot of hit up a lot now, like, hey, how do I start this? I want to do this. What is the reason most people are wanting to start a podcast that you've found? So you know your reason why you wanted to. And what I was hearing was like connection, and you generally are interested in people. And I've listened to your podcast and seen your page, so I know about like the positivity that you want to put out into the world. What are some reasons that other people like are either reaching out to you, or you're hearing about people wanting to start a podcast?
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, a lot of people want to share their story. So I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people do it like solo episodes, and they'll talk about their experience. Um, and for some people, it's like it could be like a catalyst. Like I think some people just think they want to provide value ultimately, or they have an interest, a general interest in a certain topic, which might be cooking or like creativity or mental health or whatever it is, and have that passion they have for it, and then they want to talk about it and connect with other people and create content around. Because I mean, there's thousands, millions of podcasts on all different things. So I've ultimately had people kind of talk about wanting to kind of. One of my friends recently is starting one, and she wants to talk about kind of like her medical condition, and kind of talk to her people about if they've experienced it as well. So
Mm-hmm.
there are so many branches to it, and
Do you have people, who are reaching out thinking like wanting to start one with just the end result of like getting sponsorships and making money? Like, do you have people that are just like, how like are asking that, like, how quickly can I do this? Like doing it just solely for the purpose of making money, which I don't care either way. I'm just wondering if people are thinking it's a sprint when it's actually, from my perspective, and I'm just barely kicking it off, I'm thinking of it as a marathon.
yeah, well, you yourself are thinking of it as a marathon, or you
Yeah,
mean people?
marathon, but I'm wondering if people are thinking of it as a sprint to like get to sponsorships, to like get like to start like paying their bills with it. Have you had people
Yeah.
reach out to you and kind of talk to you about like that's what they want to do, or are most people that you're communicating with really just wanting to do it like from a passion project, and then like are thinking about sponsorships and like advertising and stuff later?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely went in with that mindset straight away, and I'm very
With
kind of like the kind of
with passion, with like with the marathon or sprint
with
mindset.
with like a sprint mindset when I first started,
Yeah.
and the kind of person I am, I like to hit the ground running. And
Yeah.
from my own personal lessons, that I've learned, that podcast has helped me learn, is that it doesn't work like that, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of patience and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
takes time. And I think a lot of us go into it like that. And I've had people reach out to me and ask questions about it, and there are people out there, each to their own, but there's some people, just want to do it to make money and to monetize it. And, I think if that's your main driving force, then it's it's probably going to be short lived, because, if you're just doing it
Right.
for the money and the sponsorships like that, that's something that kind of comes with it if you do kind of get that. And
Right.
it's not the easiest thing in the world that I've learned how to monetize it. Um, there's different ways of monetizing, so you kind of have to like revise a lot of it. There's different
Mm-hmm.
routes, but I think ultimately, if you've got a big driving force deep down, um, there's a passion for it, then that will come, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me just from I've been listening to podcasts for a while.
Yeah.
Um, it seems like the sponsorships opportunities and stuff like that, that comes with value. Like you have to be creating value, right? You have to
Yeah,
create enough value to get enough attention that someone's then going to want to pay you to like mention their product or however you set that up. So I do see, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it yet because I haven't dived into those conversations, but I can just see with how my mindset's been in the past with just business or things, at times we think it's going to be a lot quicker and a lot easier than it actually is. So
yeah,
I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. So you're saying anyone can start with an iPhone. Wow, what point do you think you should upgrade equipment? Like, and like, what's kind of your benchmark been for like, okay, I'm now going to get a mic, like a little bit of a different mic,
yeah.
like a condenser mic or whatever. What was your benchmark for that?
So, I mean, when I started, gosh, for the first 20, 25 or 30 episodes, I didn't have I didn't have any in-ear wired earphones. I just literally used the microphone that's built into the phone,
That's a good one.
and I was just speaking to that, and I think you can tell on my audio, it's not
Yeah.
like great. So I did that for a while. I mean, I've got a Google Pixel, so I just got some Google earphones, these white ones like this,
Hmm.
and I used these up until December last year, and then for Christmas, I was thinking of I didn't really need anything for Christmas, and then I asked my family for a microphone. So that was after a year of
Hmm.
recording with wired earphones.
Hmm.
So like a lot of the time we you know the difference between, yeah, it's the sound quality, but you don't need to have the best mic. I mean, I was using these. You don't
Yeah.
need the best microphone to do a
Yeah.
podcast. It's mainly the content and the context of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you
Love
want to
that.
have a great mic, then that's up to you. There's no rush to do that. Some people, as we said, overthink it, and I think we can all do that sometimes. Um, I mean, I spoke to people who had all this equipment, they haven't even recorded a podcast yet. So I
Yeah.
spoke to someone who had a massive studio kitted out, and that's fine. But everyone's different. I mean, it depends what your budget is. I mean, for me, I didn't have the budget and the money
Yeah.
to buy a mic or anything like
Right.
that. 6 months ago.
Right.
So I just continued using my wired ones, and it depends on the person. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't say it's the jump to that you have to do.
Yeah. I love that because I tend to overthink it. Like I actually forgot about this mic here that I had this
Yeah.
mic. I've had it for like 10 years because I used to do like some garage band like music stuff. And I
Oh,
found it in the closet and I was like, dope. And I plugged it in and it sounds good. Like it sounds good.
yeah,
So I think just doing more with like what you have, but it's more so about the content. So if you're talking to someone about that, I love that, the content and the context. I want to dive into like some questions about how you would recommend them actually like structurally planning it out, because it seems to me the best podcasts, that the ones that I like the most, if their interview style are asking really good questions and like dialing down these like habits. Like Tim Ferriss is my ultimate. Like I started on Tim Ferriss, the Tim Ferriss show, and then then got into Gary Vee and Joe Rogan and stuff like that. But he just asked such good questions. So if you're consulting someone and talking to them about starting a podcast, with the premise being get good context, get good content, how would you then kind of coach them to kind of structure out and map it out, as far as what questions they're going to ask or how they can create the most value, maybe what questions they should ask themselves to be able to create that value? I hope that my question makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. So, I mean, I think everyone has a different show and everyone has a different way of doing it. I think ultimately, sometimes it depends who you have on the show. Um, you need to like, if you've got a certain person on, I would always kind of recommend kind of doing a bit of not background check, but like looking up their
Oh, research.
profile. Yeah, research. That's the
Mhm.
better word. And research on what they're doing. Make some notes on who they are, and
Mhm.
So when when you introduce them, you know the name of their podcast if they have one, or what their title is, and that kind of thing. And I think in podcasting, a lot of people sometimes have themes. So they'll introduce somebody. They might have a set of a certain kind of questions in a specific order to ask them.
Mhm.
Um, the way I do it is, that I've been playing it so far, is I like to just kind of free flow in the conversation with the person, and
Mhm.
I have a kind of few core questions that I ask, like what is happiness or success, role models and mentors, and favorite books. I usually ask those questions, and I've used this new question a few times, which is, if you could sit around a table with a few people and they're alive, and it could be anybody, who would it be if you could sit around a table with them?
Mhm.
So I usually use those, and as I'm talking, questions just sometimes pop up
Mhm.
organically. Um, but if it's a person who's doing a lot of different things, I will kind of sometimes set out certain questions around, what they're doing.
Yeah, got you. So we had a question on Graham, and I'm going to come back to that because I like that. I like that you kind of keep it free flowing for what you want to know about or hear about or what you want to put out on your podcast, but you also have like a few core questions that you're going to ask. I like that. That gives it more structure. I think that's good. And I'm thinking about this for mine. I'm like, okay, let's make a mental note, like ask
Yeah,
like maybe a few of the same questions. We had a question on Graham. Someone said, just jump in and go, how to know what to narrow it down to. So Tasha, if you're still here, are you wondering about like the content or like what your podcast could be about? That was her question, was how to know what to narrow it down to. And I'm wondering if she's asking about like maybe
like the
her
niche
particular
of.
podcast, the niche. I would say for me, there has to be passion or interest in it, right? Like, and I have to know for me, like, that's why I'm having connection issues on Graham.
I can still see you on this. It's fine.
Okay, good. My phone's having issues. I'm glad this isn't. So for me, I haven't announced yet. Like I'm still working on the name of mine. Like I'm getting
Yeah,
probably 8 episodes backlog before I launch it. But I'm working on the name of mine and kind of like that first tagline because I don't want to narrow it down too much and just talk about one thing. Like I don't want to just talk about like CrossFit on this, but
yeah,
really kind of for me, kind of Tim Ferriss style, like narrowing down the habits and tricks and tools that people do use to be successful. But I want to define successful as happy.
yeah.
I want to work on that a little bit. It looks like she has a follow-up question, but I want to hear what you have to say about that so far.
Okay. So for me, I think you don't have to. I mean, what works for me is like, okay, mine's around personal development, wellness, and mindset, and that kind of thing. But I've had guests on from different backgrounds, and I've had conversations that don't relate into that all the time. I've had podcasts where I talk about current trends with some of my friends, and what's going on in the media.
Mhm.
So I think like you need to kind of have an area that you kind of have, but in my opinion, I think it's okay to kind of sometimes sway and
To
be open on your episode, and yeah, to kind of be flexible and adaptable depending on the person and what you're talking about, but still you can, try and keep to a theme. If that makes Does that make sense? So
Yeah. Yeah, because you
I'm
said,
quite open.
I'm going to repeat what you said because my phone tripped out a little bit, but you said kind of yours is focused on mindset. Shoot, what's like in your profile? What would you say? Mindset and
I mean, I kind of try and focus it around, personal development,
yes, personal development.
um, personal development, and sharing people's stories, and what they do and
Yeah.
their lessons. But then I've had podcasts talking about, current trends and different things, but I try and include it around where someone can take, like something from it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. This is where I have absolutely overthought it and let perfection get in the way of progress. Like we talked about earlier, is like I knew when Ethan and I talked about starting Thirst that we should be recording on video every single conversation because I knew it could be a podcast. I knew it could be a really dope YouTube channel. And I didn't do it, unfortunately, but I knew that I should, and think about all the things that we could pull from that. Tasha, with what you're saying is, I just think you have to be passionate about it and just start, because you're going to, I think what I'm learning, and I've only done a few so far, but I've watched Adam, I've watched a few people start theirs, and I've listened to some, is you really refine as you go. And this is one thing, I love this, the idea of, I don't know the exact quote, but the idea of like, don't think that you're in a position to judge where other people are going to get value. There's a much better way to say that, but like, I try to think of it as, I try not to be audacious enough to think that I know how someone else is going to see value and like think about a topic or think about some subject. So I think diving in, and then like, you can kind of narrow it down as you go and refine, but like, at least you're practicing, because you're not going to get better if you don't just kind of start. And I think as you go, you're like, oh, I don't like talking about that at all, I'm going to not do that again. Or you might decide, I want to be super niched and talk about like this one instance that happened in my life. I don't want to get anyone on my show that like the same thing happened to. And that's,
I think that's a great point. And I think as well, just by making the content, doing it, and finding your way as you go along. And you don't have to have a set niche. You don't have to have a set topic. You can be as open as you want. Like, okay, you could have it in like self-development or wellness, because there's positive content to be taken from that.
right.
But you don't have to be set in stone to that straight away. It's like, I'm qualified as a life coach. I don't know what my niche yet is as a life coach. And people said to me, just keep on doing it and you'll find it as you go along. And that's how I think podcasts should be. Just have kind of an area in mind, just play around and just keep on doing it. And you kind of grasp like your own little like theme almost. People, like you said, kind of think, I need to have it set in this.
Right.
And it's like, just practice it. And you can always change it. You don't have to have a name straight away. You can change your name. You can change your logo.
Yeah.
Um,
That's one thing that will hold me up. I told I hired I'm a brand strategist is what I'm calling her. She's like helping me with all this. And she was like, we need to get a name and a logo. And I was like, it takes me a minute to decide logos and names for my businesses. So I have to not overthink it and dive in and just do it. We had another question from Chris Heels. What would be the best way to interview someone living in a different state? I think you can probably like repeat everything that you just said, because most people you've been interviewing are like, I mean, you're across the world from me right now.
Yeah. So what was the question? So how to interview people in different states?
Yeah, best way to interview someone living in a different state. I like this too. Let's get really tactical with this, because I've actually thought about this a lot before I just dived in and started doing it. Like, we're on Zoom right now.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I'm in the UK at the minute. What time is it right now with recording it? It's 8:15 evening time for me. And it depends on your lifestyle, depends on what time you have in your day. For me, we're in lockdown right now in the UK. So I live with family. I walk my dogs. I do, things that I have to do. But I look at my slots of time that I have spare, and sometimes times that aren't going to clash with other things that I need to do. So you have to I would say, looking at their different time zones and being I'd say ultimately being mindful of the other person's time and what works best for them. I will always say to people, what works best for you? I'm X amount of time ahead of you or behind, and kind of agreeing on a time that works best, and a time frame sometimes, I would say. That kind of answers it, and just communicating that to the other person. And
I think so. If we look just really strategic, I think that's huge, because someone said something the other day. I was on Clubhouse listening. They were talking about, like, if you're asking someone to be on your podcast, they usually are not going to get much benefit out of it. You're like asking them to give up their time. So I like what you said about like, just be courteous of their time and make it work for them. And then like strategically, we're using Zoom right now. Adam has a paid account, so he's recording. So what I'm going to do, I'm recording separate audio just on voice memos on my computer. I could be using my iPhone. I like the military saying 2 is 1, 1 is none. I did a podcast the other day on someone else's, and they did not do 2 audios. And
Yeah.
my mic didn't work. Everyone else's mic worked, but my mic didn't. So I would do 2 forms of recording. That's Zoom, so I can extract the audio off of Adam's Zoom. We could even be doing probably some type of FaceTime or Google thing that can record, but Zoom's just easy. Everyone's kind of using it. And then I like to record a second audio. And actually, I have a third right here too on my other camera, just in case that it fails in some way. I'm trying to get as many as I can.
I've got something else to say as well. Like I think, like I've done podcasts before I was using Zoom, I was using Skype, and I had an app, a free app on my phone, which recorded the audio. So even if people wanted to do video, when I wasn't paying for it, I'm not suggesting people do this, but that's what I was doing, just to pick up on the audio. But I think like when podcasting, you have to reach out to people. Don't be afraid of reaching out to people. Don't be afraid of emailing people, DMing them. And I mean, I DM'd a guy for like 6 months before he said yes to coming on the show, before he had time coming on. So people, along the way, you might get people who don't respond. You might get people who say no. You might get, like setbacks as you're doing it, but don't let that kind of like permanently set you back, if that makes sense. Like I've had lots of people say no. I've had lots of people not respond. And I've had some people be quite negative and critical sometimes. So, and I think, if you really believe in it, it's about believing in yourself and just carrying on doing it, not giving in if, because there's going to be roadblocks along the way. I think, that's generally life. And as you know, you've got a business. So.
Yeah, I like that. And I think too, I haven't had this yet. I'm waiting for it. I know it's going to happen. I haven't had too many haters on any of my stuff, but I'm sure it's coming because I'm starting to put out a lot more. But one thing I like to remember and I like to tell people is, if they're having a hard time with that, is I think Gary Vee says it too, like people will boo from the stands, but you're the one on the field.
Yeah.
Like it is always easier to sit in the stands and boo because your heart's not out on the line. You're not actually taking action. So just if you have that mindset going in too, they said, thank you so much. This is so helpful. So you're getting a lot of good thank yous and stuff on the ground, but just keeping in mind, like you're actually taking steps to like learn and grow. Even if 2 people listen to your podcast, the practice that you got in asking questions, in reaching out and DMing people. And I really like what Adam said about just not giving up, and you're gonna have some people respond yes, you're gonna have some people respond no. You're gonna have some people you can probably circle back to later once you have maybe more like maybe it looks more like you have an actual podcast. Because like for me right now, I'm messaging people, I'm like, hey, I'm starting a podcast, and they're like, where? And I'm like, coming soon. Because there's like zero proof. It's not even in my profile or anything.
But you're doing it though. You're doing the groundwork, which is making it, and building.
Yeah.
It's the foundations. And I think like there's another thing as well. Like that people always look at the numbers sometimes of how many downloads or listens they get, and it's about. I think like I saw someone got on Instagram who said, I've got 3,000 downloads this week or something like that, and I was like, damn, I haven't even got that much. And it's like if you let that in, don't compare yourself based on downloads and of how good it is. It's about like who downloads it. It's about who listens to it. Out of that 20, you could get, I don't know, 5 CEOs of a company or someone who knows somebody who then reaches out to one person. And I think if you help one person, that's what it's all about,
Yes. I mean, that's a whole thing we could get into on likes, shares, views, downloads. It's a mind game for sure. And like, I think if you get too sucked into it, it can be detrimental. So you have to kind of circle back to your why. All right. I have a couple other questions here. Someone on here said, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. Truth. So what have you found has been the most rewarding thing about your podcast?
I think for me, being able to provide value to, the audience, as well as meeting incredible people. And for me, like I didn't really kind of know where my tribe was, and people that I kind of, do you know what I mean? I kind of didn't really know my tribe, like back in the day. And I think, like, for me, it's been rewarding to connect with amazing people like yourself, and to build connections. But on the flip side, as well, to help other people through providing value and sharing people's stories and experiences on the podcast, and then have people message you or reach out to you and say, I really like this, or and to give you feedback, because
Yeah.
I'm just really humble. I mean, I bumped into my friend in town, and he was like, "Gosh, yeah, I like your podcast. I really, really like it. I listen to it when I'm at work or whatever." And I was like,
Awesome.
"Oh, yeah." I was like, "Oh, cheers for that." And I didn't even know he listened. And
Yeah.
it's the small things. It's the small things that make a big difference, I
Yeah.
find.
I love that. I have another kind of strategic question to piggyback off that, but something just happened with your mic. It sounds a little bit different. It could be on my end on like the audio. I'm just going to turn you up a little bit, but if you'll just double check your connections
Yeah, it's probably because I was talking out that
that
way,
way.
maybe. Probably.
Maybe. So one thing I've loved to watch on your account too is you're taking like snippets, you're pushing out a lot more content based on this one long form piece of content, which I got that idea from Gary Vee. I don't know if you kind of stumbled upon it, but how are you like in your day? How are you actually like breaking down your day? So like if it's a day you're recording a podcast, how are you then like what's your upload schedule, and then how are you breaking it into smaller pieces, and what like how do you keep that organized to push it out, because your gram is getting more and more full of like little smaller clips. I've seen you put together like montages of lots of your stuff, so like how are you doing that, number one, and then I might ask a follow-up question on like how people can kind of think about how to structure the output of it and using it not just to release a podcast episode, but other pieces of content as well. But how do you do it right now?
Yeah, I mean, basically what I do, or what I've been trying to do this year, is trying to plan my day in advance, or week sometimes. But life happens, doesn't always go to plan.
Right.
So pretty much this week, I've not really, I plan the podcast I'm going to be having, try and do that in advance, or I just do it as I'm going along.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to create more structure around, planning my day out or week. But like the past few days, I've just been doing, it's been a bit all over the place, to be honest. I will, get an idea to do a video on something, and I'll just kind of do it. I'll just put it out there and do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll just, be, because for me, I live with family, I walk my dogs, I'm helping out family, going shopping and everything else.
Right.
So I kind of just try and make that time in my day just to spend, 20 minutes putting out a podcast episode, or 20 minutes or whatever, editing a clip and then breaking it down and turning it into a reel.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
just sometimes I don't have any structure or plan in my day. I'm just kind of a bit of a pinball. I'm just,
Yeah.
um,
Well, you're
like,
doing a good
could it,
job for that, because like I kind of get overwhelmed because I know what I need to be doing. Side note, I think I saw you a watermark of TikTok. Does that mean you're on TikTok now too?
yeah, that's it's one of my goals. Yeah, always been one of my goals to try and post more content on there. I mean, one of the things that I think has worked for me, I've got post-it notes. So I've been writing post-it notes and putting them around my computer so I can kind of
Yeah.
see, to remind myself what I need to do. But I wrote that many post-it notes down, I've had to put them in like a folder. So, but this is a work in progress. This is something that I'm currently working on, because
Uh-huh.
I feel like I have a lot of energy, and I can be doing, say, 8 to 10 different things, or I'm trying to do 8 to 10 different things. What I'm trying to do is break it down to say, today I'm going to do these 3 things, or today I'm going to do
Mm,
X, Y, Z.
yep.
That's something that I'm trying to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
But some days it's just, I'm a bit all over the place, and then I end up posting a video. I think I posted a video at like 12 o'clock my time this night.
Yeah.
So, but I'm trying to create that more of a balance, for my time and energy to
Yeah.
do it.
I kind
That's a
of
real
think
long answer.
the way that, no, I love that. The way that I'm the same way. The way that I'm trying to do it right now is I'm trying just to get long form pieces of content and video because I want to do YouTube videos too. So like I have my camera running here and ideally, if I'm meeting someone in person, I'm going to try to have a couple cameras. So I'm going to try to get long form video and obviously I have the audio. And then if it was just me and I had the discipline, I would then go and cut it up into smaller little snippets of just like really fun, like really good little punchy, like either pieces of advice or like a laughing, like a moment where the people can get to know my personality or my guest personality and use that to advertise the podcast on my gram or on TikTok. But as long as you have the long form, like you can go back and you can cut it up and put it on reels anytime, put it on TikTok anytime. So I think that's one piece of advice I'd give people listening in. If you're not quite sure, it's okay. And if you don't want to do video as well, that's also okay. But if you do Zoom, you can record it. At least you have more opportunity for more content later and you can just store it and use it however you want to in the future. And soon you'll have
Yeah.
enough to do montages like you're doing and do, here's what 5 guests said on discipline. Like you could get to wake up early in the morning, meditate, like da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about trying to do that. And that's why I'm recruiting some help to do that. Because I'm trying to put out exponentially more content
Yeah.
in the next
And
year than I have been. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So I think that's,
yeah.
but it's all a work in progress, right? You gotta,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, it's
That's
like,
it.
when I have 20 minutes, I'm going to make it real. It's kind of, that reminded me of 75 hard. Like when I have an hour, I go do my outdoor workout. Like you just gotta fit it in if that's your goal. So
Yeah, that's it. I think that's a really good point, and I really agree. And I think it's just like making that content, and then you can break it down into small chunks and things like that, or create like a series or episodes, and that could take a lot of time. And I think you have to select that time, and that's something that I'm trying to do. I haven't done it yet, but I'm trying to break things down and put it to YouTube. I'm trying to do that. But I think, as you mentioned, doing long content, you can break it down into snippets as well.
yeah,
And you repurpose that. I mean, you see other people do it all the time.
yeah,
But I think as long as you're doing it, then that's fine. I mean, video isn't for everybody straight away, and that's
right.
fine. Just build up that confidence in getting comfortable with it if you don't want to do video straight away.
Well, that's what's great about it. That's what Gary Vee says all the time, right? Too. Like if you don't feel like you have a face for radio or you're nervous, do your podcast and practice because like you don't have to show your face if you don't want to. But if you get comfortable, start gathering that so you have more content to put out later. That reminds me, Adam, I still have an idea for TikTok for you. I mentioned it quite a few months ago and I just remembered it, and we can talk about it at the end here, but or whenever. But I want to be respectful of your time because my timer already went off once and I said another 15 and we've got 3 minutes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all good. I'm fine.
So I want to ask you a couple of the questions you ask your guests. So
Okay.
I think you said one of them. Did you do one of them about books?
Yeah.
Favorite books or like top 3? How do you ask it?
I just kind of say any favorite books usually. Yeah.
Okay.
I would.
My question to you is your top 2 favorite books that you've read more than once. That's my first question.
Do you want me to answer?
Sure, answer that one, and then I'm coming up with the second one.
Yeah, honestly, I've never read a book more than once, and that's something I probably should do.
Well, should's an interesting word. I don't know.
I read Think and Grow Rich, which I like, and I've got it above me. That's a book I really enjoyed.
You read it, or did you listen to it audible?
I read it. I read it when I was 18. I'm going. It's on my goal list to read that again this year.
Okay.
It's kind of a manual for life, really. I think we should just constantly dip into it. Um, I'm reading Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey at the minute.
Mm-hmm. Is that like his autobiography something, or what is that?
Yeah, it's like life, kind of like
Oh,
for the
cool.
first 50 years. And then I read another book recently, only read it once, called The Third Door by Alex Banyan. And
Third door.
that's basically, I think I've got it up here.
The third door. All right, sweet. I love it.
Um, so that's the third door, and it's
Okay. Alex. How do I say his last name?
Banyan, Banayan.
Nice. Banayan. Someone said good one. I don't know if they're talking about that one or the other ones you mentioned, but someone in the gram likes your choice in books.
Oh,
Do
thank you.
you typically read instead of listen, or do you listen to books too?
I prefer reading them. Unless I'm driving, then I'll try and find like an audiobook if I
Mm-hmm.
want to, or I listen to podcasts driving, or I try and find. I've got is it The Science of Getting Rich or something like that, as an audiobook.
I just wrote that one down. That one's on my
Yeah,
list.
I've not listened to the whole thing. I've listened to like the first 15 minutes, but I like to sit down. I like to hold a book. I like to feel a book and hold it, and get in that zone. Really, I think I get distracted too much if I listen to things on audio.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That's what works for me.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to try to get the audio. I'm going to skip the, okay. Brittany, thank you. Brittany was telling me that the audio was a little soft, so I'm going to scoot this phone closer to my speakers on my computer so I can hear you a little better. Okay. I'm going to bounce around just a little bit, but I was listening to this thing on Clubhouse the other day. I random room. Have you joined Clubhouse yet?
I've got an Android phone, so I'm going to have to use one of my family members' like old iPhones or something like that.
I am not going to judge you too much for having an Android right now.
I used to have Apple
Be
phones.
friends. But I got to get you on Clubhouse. But I
Yeah.
was in this random room. You will love it because it's just audio. So it is like this podcasting type feel, but it's just this genuine connection. Nothing can be recorded. It's cool, but just make sure you have time in your day because I've stayed up way too late. Anyway,
Yeah.
this one he was talking about in the room with him randomly was some guy who had interviewed him. This guy apparently had been on like a zillion podcasts. I don't know who the guy was who was talking, but he's like, I've been on so many podcasts. And he's like, and actually someone is in this room who had me on their podcast. And it was my favorite one of all time because he asked me questions about things that no one knew about, that no one had ever asked me about because something you mentioned earlier, the research that he did.
Mm.
And this guy was saying, again, once I find him, I'll send it to you. I'll do some more. This is like not a great story because I don't remember the names of the people, but the synopsis is good. He said he does like 10 to 20 hours of research before having a guest on. Now, this works for this guy on his podcast. But that's what allowed him to ask this person who'd been on a zillion podcasts these particular questions about what would look to be like pivotal moments in his life. That's what his podcast was about. So my question is to you, what has been some of the favorite questions that you've been asked?
That I've been asked by other people.
Yeah.
On other people's shows. I had somebody ask me, "What is your legacy?"
Ooh, what is
that was pretty. I think that was something that I hadn't really thought about, so I was kind of on the spot with that.
Mm-hmm.
My legacy. What advice would you give to other people who are, who might be in a particular situation, or how
Mm-hmm.
people can kind of better their mental health, kind of thing? Advice to people starting. What would you say to your younger self, or something like that?
I like it. What would you say to your younger self? We covered this a little bit, but someone did just ask, and then we'll get off. I'll
That's
close it
fine.
up. But I love chatting with you. And I want to just get you to commit to a second one soon.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to. Yeah.
So Brittany asks, how do you prepare for an interview? You kind of talked about this a little bit, but why don't you tell us again how you prepare for an interview if it's someone that's never been on your show before?
I would, if they've never been on my show before, I do research them. I look at their title. If they're on YouTube, I'll look at their their YouTube videos, get a feel of what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and any kind of key kind of achievements or key points or qualifications, anything that's kind of quite big, and then look at the work that they do. And for example, I had a guy on my podcast the other day, and he was an American rapper. So I went on his YouTube
He was
and I
American
watched
what?
a rapper, hip hop
Oh, a
rapper,
rapper. Okay.
and I watched like 4 or 5 of his videos, and that I could tune into how he raps, and then that built the rapport of when I was talking to him. And I think it depends who it is, and it's I think it does help. You have to look at the person and see what they do, but I wouldn't stress too much over the questions that you're going to ask them, if that makes sense. I won't worry about. You have to have some questions or some bullet points, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
of them and what they do, and you can kind of touch base on that. But that's what works for me. I'm not saying that is how you need to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's generally what works for me. Just do a little bit of research on them,
Yeah.
and ask the kind of questions that just resonate with you. That you think are going to work out, and you can always change them. And I think half the time as well, when you're doing a podcast with them, you might divert from the questions because your questions just pop up naturally as you're talking, and that's what happens with me.
Right.
So I'll have bullet points or questions, but then questions might just pop up as you're talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. What I'm going to try to do is definitely a good amount of research because I'm going to try to have an idea of like the path I want to go with that guest, kind of with like maybe a certain topic. But some of the most interesting interviews I've heard are like questions where they will, oh, give me 1 second.
Nice one.
I got kicked off because of a phone call. How do I bring you back? Hang on. I
can still see you. I can still see you. Still hear you.
Yes. Okay, hang on, everyone. Stand by 1 moment.
If you go back to meeting.
Okay, that's there. And I'm going to find Zoom down here. There we are. Okay. Oh my goodness. Stand by.
It's all right.
Oh my gosh. Hang on.
It's okay. So I paused it. I've just continued to record. I paused it earlier. I've continued.
Okay, I am recording over on my side too. And Graham,
yeah, don't worry.
Okay. So now I forgot what I was talking about.
You were talking about questions in the podcast.
The best interviews I've heard is when you ask like 3 questions in from like that base question, right? So like you were answering one of my questions and you said NLP, and I hopefully not too rudely interrupted you and said, "Wait, what is that?" And you said neuro something something, right? So I think, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. It's just the video was glitching a little bit.
Glitching. So making sure you can ask like those follow-up questions, like to dive deeper into a certain topic and don't just get so wrapped up, I think, with your script, number one. And again, I'm new. And then also, I just think I like the idea of the research in advance because for me personally, I don't want to go on every single podcast or every single conversation or whatever and have to tell everyone like what I do or what I'm about. So
yeah.
If like the person who's hosting can save that for like their opening and dive right in, or give a good enough intro. Oh, we've got some other podcasters joining. Give a good enough intro to give the audience a background to say, okay, we're not going to cover all the stuff that you always cover, that you always talk about. But do you know what I'm saying? Like if you can, as the host, gather that information or get an intro from them, do that intro so that it's not like, so tell us about yourself. Like, and then it's like this big question that is like, well, okay, I guess we're going to start way, way broad. At least that's the structure that I'm going to take and kind of like niche it down. Let's see what she says. Need to make sure you're actually listening and asking what the listener wants to know. I think that's great. So like being mindful of your audience,
Mm.
popping on early. Is there we're going to close up here, Adam, but
No,
and
it's
thank you
cool.
so much. You've been so great. This is so fun. I could keep going.
No, it's fine.
Is how do you ever reach out to your audience for questions or like get them to interact in a certain way, or are they mostly listening and then maybe messaging you after if like something resonates with them? I know that you said you got some DMs about people really connecting. Do you ever pop on and like have them ask questions or pre-announce someone that you're going to be on with? How do you like to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something I've been doing recently. I don't kind of um I haven't been pre-announcing anybody on my podcast. I've literally just kind of been putting up the clips and putting them out. But that's an idea that someone suggested to me quite a few times, just to pre-announce and put it out there. That's probably something I probably should do. In connecting with people in like the audience, I've only ever kind of had like a few emails. I've kind of been trying to work out how to engage with my audience. So I created like a Facebook group called the
Oh,
Parrsitivity
nice.
people,
Oh,
which is for like people who listen can join, and people who want to network and if they have podcasts or just for networking, so a bit of a mix. So
mhm.
that's kind of what I've done, but it's something that I'm still trying to trying to figure out a way of how to engage with my audience, if that makes sense. I did create a Patreon recently, which I'm going to be putting like exclusive clips on there for my podcast. But it's something I'm still learning about, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure out the best way. I do say contact me on email. That's what I usually say.
I have an idea that I would love to help facilitate if you're interested. I've
Mm.
been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about going onto my gram and Graceful Grizzly is here. We are very fan driven, fan funded. Everything we do is for them. Graceful Grizzly podcast just jumped on. Hello, fellas.
Yo,
So
yo.
that's what I'm thinking. Clubhouse is the perfect place to have like this organic conversation with people that you interact with on Gram a little bit, that you interact on your podcast, but it's like finally a chance to actually talk to them.
Mm.
So, what I would say, or think about this, you would just say something like, we're going to have a clubhouse meeting where it's AMA, ask me anything, or something like that. And you set a certain time and you just talk about it on Gram and we open up the room and basically they're in the room. Have you seen how it works or like watched any YouTube videos on it yet?
Someone, my friend Jara's told me about it.
Yeah. So basically it'd be like if you and I did it together, like we would be the moderators and you invite people to come up and ask questions. But it's like, I'm really thinking it's going to be a fun way to interact with people that like people are interacting in my stories and comments and I try to go interact on theirs and it's very fun. But like Clubhouse, it's like a conversation.
Mm. That's
So
what I,
I think
yeah.
about it. I think it'd be really fun because you could put out
Mm.
like a whole thing on your gram or your podcast and be like, hey, we're going to have a meetup, a meet and greet to finally like talk like in person.
Mm.
That would be a really, really, really fun way.
Yeah. No, that's great. Sounds like a great idea. I'd definitely be up for that.
I'm gonna test it a little bit on like just inviting like some of the people who, for whatever reason, have decided to deal with my crap on Instagram and my randomness. Hey, let's go
Yeah.
actually chat and hang out because it's just so fun. Like it's just so
Yeah.
refreshing too, and it's
Mm.
different. It's different than like an IG live because like I love that there are people on the IG live popping in and out, but I can't like I can read their comments, but I want to like hear them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
on Clubhouse, there's no video. So it's less distracting and it's just audio. It's just like
Mm.
pure and beautiful and so freaking fun.
Yeah. That's it. And I've got like another tip as well, and
Good.
like people, I I I connect to a lot of my guests through LinkedIn, and a lot of people sometimes think, LinkedIn's professionals, and oh, am I not good enough, or this kind of thing, and
Yeah.
I kind of came up against that when I first started, but you know, LinkedIn's great to network with people and to meet people to be on your podcast, and you can put your podcast content on there, and something that I'm looking at in the future is StreamYard at some point. Streaming to multiple platforms. And I think that's always an
Ah,
option because people
Mm,
engage on that as well. I've been on other people's shows and they've had StreamYard and they have people comment. So that could be a good way if people looking
love
to,
that.
you know, to network with the audience probably as well. That's not something I'm doing at the minute. But
Yeah, I'm gonna currently kind of like revamping and getting my LinkedIn like up and going, but I like that a lot too. And I've even thought about I haven't like Twitch. People do whatever they want
yes,
on Twitch now too. That would be one, right? That you could kind of do the same thing, can't you?
yeah, yeah,
It's like a streaming.
they've got a topic called just talking or people talking or something like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Podcasts, yeah.
I love that. Well, Adam, thank you so much. I want you to chat about like I really want to do a round two where we talk about
Yeah, of
like
course.
potentially monetizing and what you're thinking about that. And then tell us a little bit about what you have going on that you want people to know about, what you're working on, and also where everyone can find you because your content is so good. I will
Oh,
definitely be posting a lot about it and I'll get you guys his Instagram, but I want to hear him talk about it now. So what have you been up to? What are you working on right now and where can people find your stuff?
yeah. No, I really appreciate it. It really means a lot. And yeah, I've basically just been working on my podcast, Parrsitivity podcast. You can find me on Instagram, and that's where I mostly am. And I basically recently just been doing my podcast. I'm trying to set up my coaching on the side, you know, to help people with their mental health, and if they want any kind of mentorship or help in any way I can help, I'm happy to do that. And that's something I've been working on the side. And um,
You
I'm
have a
looking at
website
trying
for
to
that?
do. I
You
don't
have a
have a
website for
website.
that?
I've got a landing page on my Instagram bio
Okay,
with
cool.
all my content, but I don't have a solid website yet. And I'm looking at probably doing like free kind of courses in the future, or something like that where I can do courses around, I don't know, say confidence building or, you know, via
Mm,
Zoom. So
yes,
that's something that I'm playing around with. So that's kind of where I'm
love
at
it.
at the minute.
Okay, so guys, I will include his Instagram. And are you on the other socials, Facebook? Is it all under at Parrsitivity?
Yeah, my Instagram's Parrsitivity94.
Parrsitivity
If you
94.
put I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. My LinkedIn's Adam Parr, Parr.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you doing Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. Yeah, it's Adam Parr with a capital L. But
Adam Parr with a capital L.
if you go on my Instagram bio, I've got a link with all my links in one place.
Awesome. All right, Adam, thank you so, so much. I am so
No, you're
happy to have you
welcome.
on mine. I'm just astounded that you have 200 podcasts. Go check them out. And you have them on Spotify and
Yeah,
are they on iTunes? Like, where can everyone find your podcast?
they can find them on all the most of the platforms: Amazon Music, iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Pocket Casts, um, pretty much most of them. Yeah,
Love it. Sweet. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know we went over. You are always so nice to me and
you're
my
welcome. It's all good.
scatteredness. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're
I'm
welcome.
excited and I'll definitely be asking a whole bunch of questions on how to make mine close to as good as yours. So